All right, let's jump right in. For millions of cancer survivors, the fight doesn't just stop with that last round of treatment. A whole new battle often begins, one that's fought inside the mind, against this persistent, really debilitating cognitive fog that we call chemobrain.
And this isn't just about feeling tired or, stressed out from the whole ordeal of cancer. For so many, it's this profound change that affects their work, their social lives, their ability to just feel like themselves again. It's a very real and often lasting side effect of a treatment that saved their life.
So that's the central mystery we're really going to unpack. How can a treatment that's designed to save the body cause such a lingering fog in the mind? For a long time, we just didn't have the answers. But now, by following a series of really crucial scientific clues, we can actually piece together what's going on. So let's investigate.
Okay, first things first, what are we actually talking about here? While patients have dubbed it chemobrain, scientists have a more formal name, chemotherapy-related cognitive dysfunction. And it's not just some vague feeling, it's a recognized clinical syndrome. It has specific symptoms like problems with memory, concentration, and something called executive function, which is basically your brain's ability to plan and multitask.
And this is not a rare thing, not at all. While lots of patients feel this during treatment, for up to 35% of survivors, these symptoms can hang on for months or, in some cases, even years after the chemo has stopped. And that's the part that has really puzzled scientists the most.
So where do you even begin to unravel a mystery like this? Well, our first major clue comes from a really groundbreaking study back in 2008. It was one of the first to look directly at what chemotherapy physically does to the brain structure. And what this study found was that some chemo drugs can damage something called myelin. The best way to think about myelin is like the protective insulation around the nerve fibers in your brain, kind of like the plastic coating on an electrical wire. When it's healthy, signals just zip along super efficiently. But when chemo damages it, that wire gets frayed. The signal slows down, it gets disrupted, and communication inside the brain just becomes way less efficient.
But here's where it gets really weird. The damage wasn't immediate. Yeah, some initial cell death happened right after the treatment, but the real progressive damage to that myelin, it didn't show up until day 56, long after the drug should have been totally cleared from the body. It was a delayed reaction, and that just created an even bigger puzzle.
This discovery was huge, but it also just opened up a bigger can of worms, which, of course, brings us to our second clue. So here's the paradox. Many of the most common chemotherapy drugs, like one called doxorubicin, are actually way too big to get past the brain's elite security system. So if the drug itself can't even get in, how in the world is it causing all this damage inside? That security system is called the blood-brain barrier. It's this super tightly packed layer of cells that acts like a high-security bouncer for your brain. It keeps out toxins, germs, and, yeah, most drugs. It's absolutely essential protection. So how does the damage sneak past the guard? Well, it turns out the chemotherapy doesn't have to crash the party itself. It just sends messengers that are already on the VIP list. So here's how it works. The chemo does its job, causing damage to cancer cells in the body. In response, the body's immune system sounds this big alarm, releasing a flood of inflammatory messengers called cytokines. And here's the key. Unlike those big chemo molecules, these tiny cytokine messengers can slip right past the blood-brain barrier, bringing all that inflammation right into the central nervous system. Okay, so let's recap. We've got direct damage to the brain's wiring, and we've got this indirect inflammatory attack from these cytokine messengers. But that still doesn't solve the biggest mystery of all. Why does this fog last for so long?
Think about it. That spike in cytokines from a round of chemo, it's pretty short-lived. The inflammation is supposed to go down. So what's causing the cognitive problems that stick around for months or even years? This question leads us to our final, and maybe most important clue.
The answer, it seems, lies in this absolutely fascinating field called epigenetics. So think of your DNA as a massive instruction manual. Epigenetics doesn't actually rewrite any of the words in the book. Instead, it's like putting sticky notes or highlights on the pages. These marks tell your cells which instructions to read and which ones to ignore, and that changes how your genes are expressed without ever changing the DNA itself. So, and this is the absolute key. While the chemotherapy doesn't change your fundamental DNA blueprint, the intense stress and inflammation it causes can change the epigenome. It can leave behind a whole new set of sticky notes that give your brain cells long-lasting instructions to behave differently, long after that initial stress is gone.
Okay, so now let's connect all the clues. We've got the direct damage, we've got the inflammatory messengers, and we have these lasting epigenetic instructions. Let's see how they all come together to paint the full picture of how chemobrain really happens.
So here's the whole domino effect. First, the chemo acts as the trigger. This leads to that spike in cytokines that get into the brain. Then, that short-term inflammation causes long-term epigenetic changes, those sticky notes we were just talking about. These new instructions alter how brain cells function, which leads to that progressive myelin damage we saw earlier. And the final result of this whole chain? It's the chronic cognitive fog that patients experience as chemobrain.
And look, figuring all this out isn't just some academic exercise. Understanding this complete pathway is a really big deal. Why? Because it takes us away from just a vague mystery, and it gives scientists a clear step-by-step process that they can actually target to help survivors get their cognitive health back.
By targeting each step in this chain, researchers are exploring brand new strategies. I'm talking about things like blocking that initial cytokine spike, creating drugs that can actually reverse harmful epigenetic changes, or even finding ways to protect the brain's wiring right from the very start.
And this leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. The very same mechanisms we've just uncovered here, a short-term trigger causing long-term changes through inflammation and epigenetics, this might just help us understand other complex and mysterious conditions that also feature a similar kind of brain fog, things like chronic fatigue syndrome or even long COVID. The clues from chemobrain could end up lighting the way forward for millions more.